Welcome back. The University of Idaho hosting a presentation and discussion about the historical context and significance of what is happening in Ukraine today.
Yeah, it's called the Ukrainian crisis: context, causes, and consequences. 4 U of I professors will each give a presentation before answering questions from the audience.
But we're joined right now by one of those experts who will be participating in that discussion. Florian Justwan joining us right now. He's an associate professor of political science at the University of Idaho. Florian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Let's just kind of get started and let's talk about so far what has happened here in the last 24 hours, and also about the topics that you will be discussing in your seminar tonight.
Yeah, so thank you for having me here. So in the last 24 hours, we saw what many of us have been fearing. Russia launched a large-scale military invasion of its neighbor, Ukraine. In response to this large-scale military invasion, several countries, including the United States, have now issued sweeping economic and political sanctions against Russia, hoping to limit the fallout of that crisis. So during the event later tonight, all of us are going to discuss the larger causes of this crisis. There's some discussion about what the underlying causes of this crisis actually are, and what some of the potential consequences of this crisis might be for the United States and the world as a whole.
So, Professor, Ukraine has made no secret about wanting to become a member of NATO. I think it's even written into their constitution. And Russia has said all along they are not going to allow that. They actually think that's provocative. In your opinion, is this what precipitated the Russian invasion?
So I think that's part of the story, but I think it's also important to understand that from Putin's point of view, NATO membership for Ukraine is only part of a larger story. And that larger story is increasing westernization of Ukraine, a slow but measurable move of Ukraine towards the West and away from Russia politically. So over the course of the last 8 years or so, Ukraine has taken several steps to orient itself away from Russia and to seek closer ties, not just with NATO, but also with the European Union and the West more general.
We know it's obviously very, very complicated, and there's a lot of history, but how much is oil, do you think, playing into this? How much is that a factor? Can you kind of give us an idea of maybe how that would also have impacts here in the U.S. beyond what we're talking about with gas prices?
So, I mean, it is part of the story in the sense that Russia is a major oil and gas producer, and that has really allowed Russia to shore up its foreign exchange reserves. So Russia is now, I don't want to call it a very comfortable situation per se, but given the fairly high price of oil, Russia is going to be in a better position to weather the economic sanctions leveled against it by the United States, because it has been able to profit from its oil money, essentially, over the course of the last decade or so.
So back in 2014, Russia took over the Crimean Peninsula. The United States and Europe then imposed sanctions, and they didn't work. So what's the difference between the sanctions this time and the sanctions that were used back in 2014?
The sanctions are more sweeping this time around. So especially the sanctions that President Biden announced earlier today are more wide-ranging than what the West announced about 8 years ago. So there are now more wide-ranging limitations to the amount of, to the degree to which debt of Russian companies can be traded on global markets. There are more wide-ranging export limitations for goods entering Russia. And so it is possible that these sanctions hurt Russia a little bit more. Whether that's enough to really make a meaningful impact in that crisis remains to be seen. That's a little bit of speculation at this point.
So, Professor, we know now that Russia supplies most of the energy, or is the largest supplier of energy to Europe, to the European nations. European Union. So how long do you think that Europe can stick this out in solidarity with the U.S. when they rely on Russia for so much of their natural gas and oil?
So the Europeans have started conversations both amongst themselves, but also with the United States about how to weather this crisis. So yesterday, the United States has announced that it would free up some strategic oil reserves in order to limit the effects of this crisis on the global price of oil. More generally, the Europeans are, I think, in a position where they will have to bite the bullet, so to speak. It's going to be costly to them, but they are willing to go in that direction. Germany, in particular, only announced yesterday to decertify, to essentially stop a major pipeline project from Russia into Germany, which would have brought Russia a significant amount of money, which is hurting Germany from a geopolitical perspective. But Germany decided it was necessary, nevertheless, in order to send a strong signal to Russia.
All right, Professor, thank you so much. We know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and again, there's a lot more that goes into what is happening there. We very much thank you for your expertise and your insight here, and of course, we know that there is going to be a lot more of that discussion at your event tonight, so thank you again. We want to let people know about that presentation tonight, the Ukrainian crisis. That discussion will be going on from 5 to 6:30 tomorrow. You can go, it's tonight, and tonight, Thursday, so you can go on Zoom, or you can go in person to the education building there on the U of I campus in room 141. You can see the Zoom link right there on your screen. We also have this information on our website. But again, we definitely want to say thank you so much to the professor for being here and helping us understand at least a little bit of what is taking place overseas tonight. Thank you so much.